Well, it seemed like a good improvement on last week, at least. Hi, I'm Phil, welcome to my channel where I talk about all the geeky pop culture that I like, and for the last 10 weeks I've been reviewing Star Trek Picard. We're at the finale now, so no Star Trek to review for a while until Discovery Season 3 starts. I'll try and keep some Star Trek content ticking on the channel every so often, so let me know what you want to see in that regards. Do you want some rankings, some lists, some general information? I don't know, let me know in the comments below. But we're here to talk about Et in Arcadia Part 2. And overall, as I said in my little intro there, I think it was an improvement on last week. I had some issues with last week, just in the pacing and in the general, I don't know, it just didn't quite feel like the beginning of a season finale. Whereas this week, it's got lots of stuff in I really liked, it's got some excitement. There were still some things that disappointed me a bit in it, but the good stuff was better than last week's good stuff, if that makes sense. So, spoiler-free, sort of general opinions. I think there was some good character work, especially from Picard. There was some nice stuff of his interactions with some characters, which I'll get to in the spoiler section, because I don't want to spoil it now. And there was some good stuff for some other characters. Agnes, particularly, I thought was shined in this episode. I think generally she has come along a long way in this series. I wouldn't have guessed in the first couple of episodes of this series when her character was introduced in that first part that she would be such an interesting character as she turned out to be. I'd say it was around the midpoint of the series where she got interesting, and this is a spoiler for halfway through the series, so not this episode, but when she killed Maddox, that's when her character started to get interesting. We saw the repercussions of that, and we kind of get the continuation of that in this episode, and the repercussions on her, what she does now, and her psyche, and that's all interesting to explore. And it's made her one of the most interesting side characters, bar Picard, in this series, which I really wasn't expecting, honestly, when based on like the first 5 episodes, but came out of the park in the second half of the season here. Thought there were some interesting themes being explored in this episode as well. History always repeating itself was sort of a theme. But in a very Star Trek way, it kind of tapped on was the message, it doesn't have to. We can choose. And I really liked that. It was a good thematic element of the episode. And I suppose of the series as a whole. On the downsides, well, as a kind of plus and a minus, the action that we did get in this, I thought was quite good. There was some nice space battle stuff going on. However, there was a point, which again I'll get to in the spoiler section a bit more, but that I thought we were going to get something and we didn't get it, and I was a little bit disappointed in that. Also on the disappointment front, I would say the Borg cube stuff just didn't really feel like it was necessary to this plot, like it went anywhere. It seems, I said last week that I don't know why they were there, because they just showed up and got dropped to the planet, and that was it. And there was a little conversation with Picard and his crew, between him and 7 and 9, and that was it. And I thought, oh, okay, this might be okay if they play into it next week and, they're involved in the big conclusion. But they weren't really at all involved in the big conclusion to this episode. There was something that happened on the Borg cube, but even that kind of felt a bit flat. And I just don't understand why they were there, other than to just have 7 and 9 be in the finale. As for the overall story arc, though, I thought it concluded in a good way. I think thematically, character-wise, it all kind of tailed into the right sort of areas. All of our main characters kind of felt like they'd arrived at the place that they were heading to, and it just kind of felt like it was a fitting conclusion to this plot arc, with leaving some possible strands to potentially explore next season as well. So yeah, overall I thought, fairly solid episode, but there were some issues I had with it along the way. There was some character stuff as well, which I'll talk about in the spoiler section in a second, that also felt a little bit off. Or a little bit like, this has no setup, I don't understand where this is coming from. But we'll get to that as well. So, spoiler section. Where did we leave off last week? So we left off with Picard captured. Agnes seemingly had betrayed them again. The Borg cube had crashed. Narek had been captured and been framed for killing, or made to kill the other synth, so that Karma had Sutra. Karma, of course, Karma Sutra. Sutra had could manipulate the rest of the synths to do what she wanted and build this beacon. And the beacon, at this point, is almost complete. In this episode, though, we find out that Agnes really wasn't betraying Picard. She was simply trying to put herself in a position as a sort of double agent so that she could then free Picard at a later date, which she does. And there were some really good scenes between her and the Dr. Soong, who, when you could just... There was this sort of frustration that you could see, and when he leaves the room, that's when we found out that she hadn't betrayed Picard. And I just thought it was really well acted. I thought it was an interesting turn for her character, sort of redemption arc, somewhat, for killing Maddox. And after all the trauma she'd gone through following that, it seemed like a good place to bring her character to. So I was quite pleased with that. And as I said, there was this theme of history repeating itself. That was one line that Narek said, that history always repeats itself. And he was expecting it to here. What's very Star Trek is that there's the message that it doesn't have to. We can make the choice. And Picard spent most of this episode trying to persuade Soji to make that right choice, to make the choice that history doesn't have to repeat itself and they don't have to, follow that cycle again. I think that's a very poignant message, very relevant to today, and I think it was well handled and well explored in this episode. When Rios hid the bomb that they were going to try and blow up the communicator beacon thing with in a football, I was fully expecting them to go full cheese and have him at one point boot it into the machine from a distance. And you know what? I'm kind of disappointed that he didn't do that. I thought that was set up. It was in a football. He's got these football skills that you've set up earlier on. Yeah, okay, that's why he has the football. But it would have been... Okay, it would have been cheesy, but I think it would have been quite fun if he'd kicked the football rather than having the bomb come out of the football and then he throw that. Just would have been a bit more fun, people. Add a bit of fun to this. It would have been cheesy, but I would have loved it. One of the most emotional moments in this episode for me wasn't the Picard's death or his afterlife reunion with Data, which we'll talk about later. That actually came much earlier when he was talking to Soji on the communicator. He was up in the ship and he was saying that he was going to give his life for her and the rest of the Sims, and he hoped that would change her mind. And that whole scene was brilliantly acted by Patrick Stewart, and really that moment was the most emotional bit of the episode for me personally, even more so than his death later on. I thought that was just really well done. And we got an adaptation of the Picard maneuver, nice little callback there, of course, and an advancement of it. That was quite nice, seeing all those ships, copies of the ship appear on their sensors and their scanners and things. That was very interesting. And then, of course, when Starfleet shows up, that is a punch the air moment. Really love that. And we get Riker back in the uniform, back in the captain's chair, commanding that fleet. One thing, though, that I did think about that was that it was strange that there were so many Starfleet ships and they were all the same class. Every other time we've seen a big, massive battle where Starfleet assembles their ships, all, as many as we can. Think the Battle of Sector 01, the, War 359, all of that, as Dominion War. There's always been multiple classes of ships. And I think there may have been a line in there to explain it. That Riker says something about, we've got the most advanced ship that Starfleet has, and we have a lot of them. So I think he said something along those lines to explain it, but it just would have been nice to see a few different classes of ships in there. Maybe some familiar ones, some older ones, maybe, a Sovereign class here or there, or, whatever. Any other classes, a Prometheus class maybe in there as well. That would have been nice to see. But they just seem to be, unless I missed it, all the same class, which is a bit disappointing. Yeah, probably saved them money in the visual effects. Just would have been nice to see a few more. But great to see Riker back. Now, another disappointment I had with this scene, we'd had some great action just before this with Picard's small ship flying and the Orchids as well attacking the Romulans. Some great space battle stuff there, and then all these ships turned up, and I don't know if that's the most ships we've ever seen on two opposing sides waiting for battle, because we had so many Romulan ships and so many Starfleet ships, and then they didn't fight, and I was really looking forward to them fighting, because that would have been an epic battle. But then maybe that would have needed another 10-20 minutes on the episode, I don't know, and would have taken the plot in somewhere maybe they didn't want to take it. But they kind of teased us with that and then didn't deliver it, which was a little bit annoying. As I said earlier, the Borg Cube stuff was a little bit disappointing. I don't really understand why they were there, other than to get 7 of 9 in the position to be there so that she's part of the crew in the, hey, we've assembled our new crew, engage scene at the end. Which, great that she's there, but the story arc element of it just didn't seem to add anything. They crash landed their last episode. Wasn't really any emotional connection to any of the characters being there. There wasn't any plot reason for them to be there. They didn't do anything to help Picard out particularly, and the resolution of that plot. The only sort of tangible little thread they tied up in this episode was the fact that 7 of 9 killed I've forgotten her name, Narissa, killed Narissa in a fight that felt very flat, if I'm honest. It didn't have any punch to it. wasn't particularly amazingly choreographed, in the sense that it didn't wow me as a fight scene, and also it didn't have any emotional punch to it. There was no particular connection between these two characters that made me think, other than I suppose from a few episodes ago where Narissa killed all those ex-Borgs, but because we hadn't seen these two interact before, there was nothing that kind of led up to this, and it just kind of felt a bit hollow, and over with really quickly as well. It was a quick fight, and it just seemed a bit pointless. So I think it was all there just to get 7 of 9 on the planet so she could be there at the end. It's a bit of a shame. I think they could have possibly done more with it. So the resolution to the plot arc of the destroyers calling the other artificial race, the synth race, to help them and destroy all organic life, I thought that was wrapped up pretty well. I liked the decision that Soji had to make, and how her sort of thought process was explained to us throughout the episode, both from her and just from the acting in general in the episode. And the conversations between her and Picard were always great, and I like the resolution. We obviously got see a sort of glimpse of this race, this synthetic race that are coming in from a portal to somewhere, another dimension maybe, who knows. But what I'm interested in is if they're going to carry on that thread at all, maybe into season 2, because yes, this particular race of simps have decided they don't want to call them in the end. They're not going to call this race a backup, but now this race knows they were called at one point. Will they be trying to come back? Will they be an adversary for the future that maybe various races have to team up against? Maybe we get an alliance of synth races of our of the galaxy that Star Trek inhabits, and ex-Borgs and organic races all working together to defeat maybe a common enemy that comes in. That could be something for season 2. Yeah, I'd be disappointed if we never see them again, having teased them with those images. I'd like them to explore it a bit more. Picard's death was really well played, and I think emotionally well done. The brain aneurysm, it's Chekhov's gun. It was mentioned in the first couple of episodes. We knew it was going to come into play at some point, and here it does, and it effectively kills him. And then we end up in this sort of afterlife-y, simulation-y thing with Data. And there's this really lovely scene between the two of them. There's a lot of philosophizing about death and the meaning of life, if it's infinite versus if it's finite. And that was really good Star Trek stuff, philosophical discussions, really interesting stuff. And then, of course, the emotional kick to it is that Data decides that he wants to die. There's all of his memories stored in this simulation, as a simulation, basically. And he decides that he wants to die. And that's, that was we're not going to see him again, probably. But it was an interesting discussion anyway about whether or not life has meaning if it's not finite. I liked that. I was worried that with the Gollum thing, that they might go down the route of having a young Picard and recasting for season 2, and that might be a way they were trying to sort of work without, Patrick Stewart, or have Patrick Stewart still in it as sort of in the head of the younger one, or something like that. I'm very glad they didn't go down that route, because I was thinking, oh god, please don't do that, and thankfully they didn't, but it was just in the back of my mind that might be something they would do. There were some other random little character bits at the end, which don't really have any massive impact, but also felt a little bit off. Rios and Seven's conversation... Actually, no, Rios and Seven's conversation was okay. It was more Raffi... They sort of paired off in their mourning of Picard towards the end, before he got resurrected as in the Gollum. And Raffi and Elnor's one was a bit... Elnor was crying, which I suppose fits in his character, I guess, the candid character. I don't know. It just, given that we were already kind of assuming that he was coming back, it just kind of felt a bit strange. But the weirdest thing I found, actually, towards the end of the series is when they're all back on the ship. It's right at the end of the thing, and we get this shot of Seven of Nine and Raffi having this moment at a table, completely dialogue free, and they're interlinking hands in what looks like a very romantic way, which, fine, but it felt a bit out of nowhere, especially considering Raffi had seemingly declared her love for Picard the episode before. So if they're hooking up those two, it just felt a bit out of nowhere. By all means, you could have gone that route in season 2, I think. Absolutely. But it just was strange that it was just happened, and there was no build up to it. It didn't feel earned. It kind of seemed to contradict Raffi's declaration of love for Picard. Now, I may be completely misreading that, and that may not be the intention at all, for it to be a romantic hand-holding, but it very much looked like a romantic hand-holding. Maybe I am reading that completely different to everyone else, but it was just a kind of out of nowhere, not really earned, saying it but not saying it. And I think that could have been a way, they absolutely could have gone that way in season 2, and it could have been a really interesting, story arc to have them blossom into a relationship. But they didn't do the work to get it to that point so far. Does that make sense? Did that seem strange for everyone else, or was it just me? But it ended on a lovely note. The new crew has seemingly been assembled, and we end on an engage and off for new adventures. I hope season 2 kind of follows another serialised plot point, but I hope we start with this crew all still together, all working together, doing something in some way, and then we launch into maybe a serialised plot. I don't want to find Picard back on his vineyard at the beginning of season 2. So that's my thoughts on the episode. I thought it was a fairly solid conclusion to the story arc. I really liked that. There were some bits in it that I thought they wasted potential, some weird character moments in it that I thought weren't earned. But overall, an enjoyable ride. And this whole first season has been an enjoyable ride so far. I've really enjoyed it, and has been my favourite Trek for a long time, I think. Look, let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. I will be back for more Picard, Star Trek, Discovery stuff at some point. So do hit that subscribe button if you're a Star Trek fan and want to see more Star Trek content from me, in amongst my Doctor Who stuff and other pop culture stuff that I cover. Hope you're all okay as well and enjoying this isolation we're having. I say that ironically. We're all got to, hope you're all staying inside as much as you can, being careful and all that, and I hope it's not getting to anyone too much. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.